this one gonna be kind of a long one, but
multiple parts. Part one.
Huh?
Just letting them know it's multiple parts. This is part one. We'll try to cover as much. Go ahead. Introduction.
All right. So we're gonna talk about. I don't know if you said it now, but we're talking about the 12 tribes, and we're basically gonna go through like a little background of it. Well, before we start, we want to give all praise, power, and glory and thanks to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakadash. Double honors to the elders, the prophets, the apostles, the wise men, our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Salutations to the hopeful elect. Just out here pushing the truth to the four corners of the earth. To you, I say shalom. So before we start, I'm gonna start off in Genesis 32, and I'm gonna read 22 through 30. Well, we're gonna be talking about between 22 and 32 in Genesis chapter 32. All right, so in this one, we're gonna talk about how Jacob, his name was changed. All right, so I'm gonna start at 24, and I'm gonna work my way down to 32. So, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaketh." And he said, "I will not let thee go, except thou bless me." And he said unto him, "What is thy name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince hast thou power with Yahweh and with men, and hast prevailed." And then the rest, it just talks about, the Most High didn't tell him his name, but basically what it's talking about is, he changed the name to Jacob, or, Israel, or Yasharallah, which, it talks about how, the prince, how Jacob is the prince. So that's why Yahweh Shai, and Yasharallah, they all go back hand in hand. That's why it's important to study the etymology of it. And then we're gonna jump to Genesis 49, where Paris is going to talk about Jacob's 12 sons, and the blessings that they were blessed with.
Yeah, we will make up the 12 tribes today, and just a brief introduction because we wanted to get. I'm gonna start at Genesis 49. And Jacob called for his son, said, "Gather around, tell what will happen in the days to come. Assemble and listen, Jacob."
Hey, hold on, bro. You keep going in and out. All right, go ahead.
So, let me start from the top. Then Jacob called for his son and said, "Gather around, so I can tell what you will happen to you in the days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father, Israel, Yasharab, Reuben. You are my first, my might, my first time strength, excelling in power. Reuben, the strength is my power. To my couch defiled it. Sting and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Then on the 8, and this is Judah. Judah, your brothers will praise you, and you will be on the neck of your enemy. Your father's sons will bow down. You are lions of Judah. You return from the prey, my son, like a lion. He crouches down and lies down like a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter will not depart you, nor will the ruler eat, unto whom a of the nation shall be his. So basically, he was giving Judah dominion and rulership of nations, and saying that they will be his to rule, and he will tell the time is his coat, his choosing. He will wash his garments in wine, and his robes in the blood of grapes. And his eyes will be dark as wine, his teeth whiter than milk. They live by the seashore, a haven for ships, and his border towards Sidon. Issachar is a all who he sees how good his rest is, how pleasant his land is, he will bend his shoulder.
Hey, you keep going in and out, bro. Like, you keep skipping back and forth. We couldn't really hear you.
All right. I'm on Issachar. Issachar is raw bone sheep. When he sees his resting place and how good his resting, how pleasant his land is, he will lift his shoulder to the burden to be free. And now I'm down to 19. Attacked by the band of raiders.
You still keep going in and out, bro. Again, here we're talking about the 12 tribes, and we're just giving the background. He's reading through Genesis 49. He read through 2 through 10, and now he's on 13, and he's going to read all the way down to 22.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And I touched on 13 and 16. Provide justice for his people and one for Israel. Then will be the snake and the roadside of a viper along fight horse hills, so that its rider goes back. Yeah.
I can't really hear you, bro.
Hold on, I'm gonna see. Y'all hear me in the chat? Clear?
To me, you keep going in and out.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask somebody in the chat. I'm just trying to. Can y'all hear me quick? Is it breaking up?
Hey, Landa, you keep going in and out. Keep going in and out.
It's clear. Is it clear? Yeah.
Say what?
Yeah. He just said it's pretty clear.
It's like you keep skipping, and like when I'm trying to hear you talk, you keep going in and out. And said, I mean, I can hear myself. It's not me. It's like on your side.
Yeah. That's what I'm. Hold on.
All right, read through 13 again, bro. So if you just now joining us, we're reading through Genesis 49. We're talking tribes. So he's going through 13 through 22 in Genesis 49 when he's talking about the blessing that Jacob / Israel gave him.
All right.
Go ahead, bro.
All right. Yeah. Now I'm gonna start over, and I'm gonna be at verse 14. And Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying among the sheep's pens. When he sees how good his resting place is, how pleasant his land is, he will bend his shoulder and burden to submit and forced labor. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be the snake by the roadside, a viper along the path, and the bites of the horse heel, so its rider tumbles backwards. So basically, Dan is he keeps justice. He's the lawgiver. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich, and he will provide delicates fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears bearful fawns, and Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring whose branches climb over a wall. And Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in which the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the plunder. And all these were the 12 tribes of Israel, and that was the Father and said to them, and he blessed them, giving each other the blessing appropriate to him. Now these are all the Now, basically, Genesis 49, this is the blessings that Jacob had bestowed upon his 12 sons, and the attributes that will be bestowed upon them to today. Like a lot of these things that have described about these different tribes, you can see in them today. Just like with Issachar. Issachar is one of the hardest working people on this planet, man. If y'all don't believe it, y'all can look at all these buildings beside. Nobody puts in work to build these buildings but Issachar. And so another part I want to jump down to, because a lot of people have a lot of questions about captivity and how Israel was seized and how they were put in captivity, and just about the history of it. Because a lot of people, they understand that this did happen to us in history, but they want to know how and exactly in what fashion and who did what, when, and where. So we're going to go through Bible verses and kind of correlate this with history, kind of get you a better understanding of what happened to Israel over different captivities. And we're going to touch on specific situations that got us to the situation that we are in now. And then after we touch on this, we'll in another part 2, we'll better explain the 12 tribes and how they pertain to each each characteristic of them, and how we know that Judah is the Negroes, Issachar is the Hispanics. So let me start. So basically,
go ahead.
Okay. So basically, the Northern Kingdom was the first to be attacked, and they were attacked by the Assyrians, and this started around 734 BC, and they were conquered, and this was a multiple invasion. This wasn't one invasion. So over a amount of time, they were invaded multiple times, and eventually they were sacked, and they started taking more and more people out their tribes, and so the numbers had got really, really low. So while this was happening, there was actually a civil war amongst Israel between the tribes. So they were already at odds with each other, and they were really not agreeing on things. So they really weren't having each other's back fully like they needed to. So also, while the Northern Kingdom was being seized and sacked, the Southern Kingdom started to get conquered, and they started to get seized and sacked. And this started happening in 1605 BC by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And what a lot of people have to understand is that Babylon and Assyria, they became one entity. They assimilated both of their governments together and became one entity to take over and siege Israel. And I'll let you start on 19. And this is the first part Darren will start. He'll start on 931 BC, and this will explain the civil war that results in the divided kingdom. There was just a whole bunch of disagreements between the tribes. So you can go ahead and start. You start in First Kings.
So I'm gonna start in 1 Kings chapter 11, and I'm gonna start on 28. So it's about Solomon's adversary Jeroboam, one of his officials. So I'm gonna start on 28. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Yahweh, the power of Israel. Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon. I will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because that they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Shamash, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to that which is right in my eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments as did David his father. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I chose because he kept my commandments and my statutes. So basically, what's going on is simple. Like, and a lot of people don't understand that Solomon, basically, it was a lot going on, and there was a lot of wickedness going on. So that's when the tribes started to get divided. You have to understand that Solomon, a lot of these things that's going on, like alchemy and stuff like that, was started by Solomon. Like the 33 degrees and things like that. All of that comes from Solomon, which started alchemy. So basically, what the Most High did, he divided up the kingdom, but he kept Judah to Solomon, and he passed out the other tribes. That's just the beginning. So I'm gonna jump to chapter 14 of First Kings, and I'm be dwelling between 21 and 31. So 21 and 31 21 starts off talking about Rehoboam's evil reign over the southern king of Judah. So I'm starting on 21. And 21, Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which Yahweh did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Nehemiah and Ammonitis. And Judah did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins, which they had committed above all that their fathers had done. For they had also built them high places and images and groves on every high hill and under every green tree. So basically, what you have to understand, when the kingdom was divided between, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, there was a lot of evil that was done in the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. 14 is just talking about Rehoboam when he did evil in the sight of the Most High. You got to remember, it was a lot of kings before or after David, which became king over both sides of the kingdom. But when they divided it, it just became more evil. There was a few kings that did do, good in the sight of the Most High, but majority of them did wrong. So I got Paris will take over between 931 and 910 BC when he talks about the Levite priest.
Exactly, and I'm touching on the part where the Levite priests, they were rejected by the northern kingdom, and they started to take a part of the Assyrian traditions with the pagan holidays, and it's where you get the start of the Ishtar worship and the same worship that the Roman Catholic Church uses today. So basically, I'm gonna touch on 2 Chronicles, and then also when they rejected the Levite priests returned back to the southern kingdom because they realized that there was no place for them to be here. They weren't listening to anything they were trying to preach. So I'm going to jump down to 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 13. And the priests and the Levites that were in all of Israel resorted to him out of all their coasts. For the Levites had left the suburbs and their possessions and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing priest office into the land. So basically, the priests they were being disrespected. And they were making sacrifices, like he was explaining earlier. They were just making sacrifices for pagan holidays. And the priests weren't gonna stand for it, so they said, "We're just gonna be out of here. Y'all don't want to listen to anything we're gonna say." So I'm gonna jump down to 811 through 870 BC, where the priests finally joined into the southern kingdom, and this is in 2 Chronicles 15. I'm going to start at verse 8. And when Asa heard these words and the prophets of Oded, the prophet took courage and put away the abominable idols out of the land of Judah and Benjamin, and out of the cities which he had taken from the mount of Ephraim, and renewed the altar of the Lord, and that was before the porch of the Lord. 9. And gathered all of Judah and Benjamin and the strangers with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh and out of Simeon. For they all fell out of him in Israel in abundance when they saw that the Lord and his God was with them. So basically, even the people from the northern kingdom, because everybody in the northern kingdom, they wasn't trying to worship these pagan holidays. They weren't trying to follow behind their sins. They were actually trying to follow the Levite priests. So what they did is they got behind the Levite priests and they just moved to the southern kingdom, and they started to restore order back in the southern kingdom and get rid of the statues and all the landmarks that were just unholy, and started getting back to the right way of worshiping. And then I'm going to jump down to 734 through 732 BC. And this is talking about just like I was talking about earlier, this is the first invasion of the northern kingdom by Assyria, because while they were over here following behind the Assyrians, they didn't know that the Lord was setting something up for them, because he's like, since you don't want to listen to me, I'm going to let loose your enemies, and they're going to besiege you. And I'm in 2 Kings 15, verse 29. And in the time of Pekah, the king of Israel, Tiglath and Pileser, the king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abeth, Albel, Beth, Makah, Jonah, and Kadesh, and Hazar, and he took Gilead and Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported them to the people of Assyria. So right there, he took majority of the people out of the northern kingdom and just put them in bondage in Assyria. And now Darius is going to start with 729 through 686, and this is talking about how Simeon continued to dwell with the southern kingdom in the days of with Judah. So you can go ahead and touch on that.
So yeah, just like he was saying, when Simeon decided to continue to dwell with Judah in the days of Hezekiah, the king of Judah. So First Chronicles chapter 4, 24 through 43, what it's telling you, it's giving the descendants of Simeon, you know, the son of Simeon were Nemuel and Jamin and all of them. I'm gonna jump down to 38. These mentioned by their names were princes and their families, and the house of their fathers increased greatly. And they went to the entrance of Gedor, even unto the east side of the valley, to seek pasture for their flocks. And they found fat pasture and good, and the land was wide and quiet and peaceable, for they of Ham had dwelt there of old. And these written by name came in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and smote their tents and the habitations that were found there, and destroyed them utterly until this day, and dwelt in their rooms, because there was pasture there for their flocks. So that's just talking about, you know, the descendants of Simeon and how they just went through the land of Ham and just basically took over stuff.
Exactly. So while this was going on, and Simeon was helping the southern kingdom take over more land and prosper, the northern kingdom, because they weren't listening to the Most High and they were disobeying him, they had a second invasion by the Syrians, and this happened in 722 BC. And I just want to let people know that while we're talking about all these different invasions, is that this is scattering of more people. Like, these people are being scattered, and that this is where we get every time we come on. We talk about the hopeful elect and the scattered abroad, because every time I speak about these invasions, that's more about people being scattered to another corner of the world. So just like we come on here, we talk about, this is what we're pertaining to. This is the history that we're talking about, and this is very important. What we're trying to break this down today. So I'm gonna jump to 2 Kings 17:3. And against him came Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to the sole king of Egypt, and brought him no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came out and threw up all of the land, and went up to Samaria and besieged it in 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel with it into Assyria, and placed them in Halah, in the harbor in the river of Gozan, in the city of the Medes. So again, them not listening to the Most High and pertaining to His word, and basically trying to restore order back in the northern kingdom, they got carried away and they were taken into captivity, and now they can't rule over themselves. So this is just showing you what happens when you fall out of order with the Most High. You keep this in mind. While this happened, the southern kingdom is gaining land and ruling and prospering, because they did what the Most High said. And I'll let you jump down to I'll let you jump down to 1701 BC, where the Assyrians, they had well, I'll talk about this. Is 1701, where the Assyrians, they tried to invade Judah, but it was to no rise. They did take 46 cities and 200,000 plus captivities taken, but they did not take Judah fully in captive, so the Lord had protected them. And I'll let you jump down to 605 BC, with the fall of Jerusalem to Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar.
All right, so with the fall of Jerusalem, it actually happened twice. So the first time it really happens is in Jeremiah 39, if I am correct. You know, it happened twice. So like Jeremiah 39, and it happened in 60. No, that must be the fall of Jerusalem.
Yeah. 605 BC and then 70 AD. So
this
is 605 prior.
yeah, so 605, it's talking about how, Babylon has, assimilated with Syria. They came together and they just began carrying forces. Usually what happens with war and you have captivity, like he was saying, more people got scattered. So to talk about that one, I'm going to jump to Daniel 1:1 real quick just to touch on it. Because Daniel, around the time of Daniel was basically, with the king of Babylon as well. This happened after, they were already carried away. So they were already dwelling in the land with Nebuchadnezzar. So Daniel 1:1, in the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahweh gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, which part of the vessels of the house of power, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. So basically, they just took everything that was dwelling in the land of Jerusalem, and Babylon just took it as well as his people and carried them away to Babylon. Like I said before, the fall of Jerusalem happened twice. Jeremiah 39, and what you can read more about that. And it happened in 52, which we'll get to. But the next thing I'm talking about is in 458 BC, when they returned under Ezra. So the ones that did return were Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and as well as Ephraim and Manasseh, because they mixed along with Judah prior to the captivity. So I'm gonna jump to First Chronicles chapter 9, and I'm going to read through verses 1 and 3. So chapter 9, verse 1. So all Israel were reckoned by genealogies. And behold, they were written in the book of the king of Israel and Judah, who were carried away to Babylon for their transgression. Now the first inhabitants that dwelt in their possessions in their cities were the Israelites, the priests, Levites, and the Nethinims. And in Jerusalem dwelt of the children of Judah and of the children of Benjamin and of the children of Ephraim and Manasseh. So he's just telling you about the people who lived in Jerusalem and things like that. I think what's the next one? The Torn Kingdom.
No, this is the part this is the part I'm gonna jump to. A lot of people this is where people get confused. So they understand, okay, the fall. They understand that they have been Israel has been attacked and they have been waged war against. So that means that a lot of people are scattered and meant to different places. So during the reign of King David, he had a military census where they were like, there were over 1 million Israelites that were, had a sword, they were ready to battle. And 470,000 of these Israelites, they were of Judah. So this is just letting you know, this is not counting children or men. This is not counting children or men or women that couldn't fight or that were not fit for war. This is just talking about only men that was fit for war. So this is letting you know that the numbers were kind of swayed, and this is like, where did all the other parts of the tribe go? You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to explain this in 2nd Ezra 13, because there was a migration that is talked about in the Bible, but it's not explained enough. And this is when this migration took place after these invasions by Assyria. A good portion of the northern kingdom, they migrated because they wanted to get away from the other nations because they kept getting sacked and they kept getting sieged on. So I'm gonna jump to 2nd Ezra 13, verses 39 through 47. And if you want to know a date or a time around this happens around 100 AD. This is nearly like 1,400 years before 1492, which is dumb diversity. So verse 39. And as for you seeing him gather himself another multitude that was peaceable, and these are the 10 tribes which are led away from their own land into captivity in the days of King Hoshea and Shalmaneser, the king of the Assyrians, and led captive. He took them across the river, and they taken into another land. But they formed this plan for themselves. They would leave the multitude of the nations and go to a more distant region, and they were when mankind had never lived. So basically, when they were taken, they had another plan in hand that they would run away, even though they were taken to what they thought was the edge of the earth, and there was more earth that people hadn't seen. So they thought they would flee away to this earth that never was seen. And what you got to understand is that the only portion of the earth that was known at this time was the so-called Middle East African area. Now I'm at 42. And that at least that they might keep their statutes, which they had not kept in their own land, that they went by the narrow passages of the Euphrates River, so that at the time the Most High performed signs for them and had stopped channels of the river until they had go pass over. Through the region that there was a long way to go, the journey of a year and a half, and that the country is called Azareth. I'm going to get to that word later. Then they dwelt there until the last time, and now that they are about to come again, the Most High will stop the channels in the river again, so that they may be able to pass over. Therefore you saw a multitude gathered together in peace. So I want to get back to that word Azareth. That word Azareth, if you look this up, Azareth just means another land or a new land. And this is later found out by Christopher Columbus. And in other records, the Azareth is another term or another word for the Americas, or where the Northern Kingdom dwelt. And I will be putting links to this information where I have a couple of links, a couple quotes from books, where I'll put in the description, so y'all can look at that yourself. And they basically tell you flat out that the lost 10 tribes of Israel migrated to America. So a lot of people just need to read up on this, but they have questions. They always ask me how this happened. There you go. It's your part, torn down kingdom.
Oh, okay. So the torn kingdom, we're just basically talking about, more division amongst the kingdom and how basically they end up being scattered and carried away, and like Jerusalem becomes desolate. So I'm gonna jump to 1 Kings 14, verses 14 through 16, which is basically talking about, it's just prophecy. And then I'm gonna jump to Lamentations 4 and 16. So 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 14. Moreover, Yahweh shall raise him up a king over Israel, who shall cut off the house of Jeroboam that day. But what? Even now. For Yahweh shall smite Israel as a reed is shaken in the water, and shall root up Israel out of this good land which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their groves provoking Yahweh to anger. And he shall give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who did sin and who made Israel to sin. So basically, he just got tired of us. It's only so much you can do. And when we keep polluting his name, he just had to do away with us. So I'm going to jump to Lamentations 4 and 16. Thought I'd jump to that. Salakia.
You did. You on 1 Kings 14
yeah.
to 16.
I read through that one.
Okay.
I might have jumped to Lamentations.
All right.
So Lamentations, I'm going to read chapter 4, verse 16. The anger of Yahweh has divided them. He will no more regard them. They respected not the persons of the priests. They favored not the elders. So Lamentations take place after the second fall of Jerusalem, which happened in 70 AD. If you want to read more about it, you would read, Babylon to Timbuktu. Like, this is the part that they don't talk about in history. They only start directly, going into Africa.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about it than just, what people think. So it started off in 70 AD with the Israelites, and then we fled into Africa, which that's how you get the land of, Yehuda, which, where we dwelled in like the northwestern of Africa. What's next, Zechariah?
Yeah, I'm going to touch on Ezekiel real quick before you get into it. So just like he was talking about Ezekiel, I'm going to touch on another part where just the children, they were rebelling against the Most High in Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 21 through 24. But their children to rebel against me. They refused to keep my decrees and follow my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. And they also violated my Sabbath days. So again, I threatened to pour out my fury on them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my judgment against them to protect the honor of my name before the nations, that they have seen my power in bringing them out of Egypt. But I took so long an oath against them in the wilderness. I have swore I will scatter them among all nations, because they did not obey my regulations. They scorned my decrees and violated my Sabbath days and longing for idols of their ancestors. And this is just many examples of Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Cuba, and Haiti, and these are the different tribes of Israel. We will get into later explaining them, but this is just some of the crimes they did against the Most High, not following His holy days. And you can also read more into that in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 26 to 28. I'll let you touch on Zechariah.
All right, so I'm gonna jump to Zechariah, chapter 10. I'm gonna read verses 6 through 9. So I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them again to place them. For I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I had not cast them off. For I am Yahweh, their power, and will hear them. And they of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, and their heart shall rejoice as through wine. Yea, their children shall see it and be glad. Their heart shall rejoice in Yahweh. And I will hiss for them and gather them, for I have redeemed them, and they shall increase as they have increased. And I will sow them among the people, and they shall remember me in far countries, and they shall live with their children and turn again. So basically what he's telling you, he's prophesying, the victory of the kingdoms. So even though he scattered them, abroad, amongst the countries that they're dwelling in right now, he's going to bring them back to the land of Israel, which you can read. I can't think of the chapter, but he's going to bring you back through the ships of Tarshish. But he's just telling you that he's going to bring his people back to the land of Israel. Like he led you out of Israel, he's going to bring you back to Israel. And also to touch on that, the Southern Kingdom, what the Southern Kingdom had going during that was basically Judah was allowed to come back to their own land after Babylonian captivity, which, you get between rebuilding the temple and things like that. But they stayed from Yahweh and were unfaithful again because we're stiff-necked people. Everybody knows how that one goes. These are attacks were nothing compared to the final straw, which was the siege of 70 AD when we went from Babylon to Timbuktu, when we were, we basically fled into Africa, which is like next door. Like the Middle East basically is a part of Africa. But and then that's when we take on to something different, about how we became slaves and sold and stuff like that. But yeah, we just give you the outline about how that all led up to us going to Africa.
And how they're all scattered.
The Hamites. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing I want to touch on is that while this is happening, we had a good portion of Judah that was also living in Europe. A lot of people don't know about it. I have a video that I posted, and I'll attach that to this video. That there was a good portion of Judah that lived in Europe, because we did rule Europe and the British Isles for a very long time. And then also that before the fall of 70 AD, that Yahushua, he did prophesy about this in the enslavement of the Jews. That he prophesied about this before it happened, and that a lot of his people didn't understand or listen to him when he made these warnings. So I wanted to touch on Luke chapter 21, verses 20 through 24. And when you see Jerusalem surrounded by all armies, then you will know that the time of its destruction has arrived. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills, those in Jerusalem must get out, and those out of the country should not return to the city, for those will be the days of God's vengeance. The prophetic words of the scriptures will be fulfilled. How terrible will it be for a pregnant woman, for nursing mothers in those days? There will be a disaster in the land, great anger against this people, and they will be killed by the sword and sent away as captives to all nations of the world. And Jerusalem will be trampled down by Gentiles until the period of Gentiles comes to an end. So just like Brother Dan was talking about earlier, this is the time where this was the destruction of Jerusalem as we know it. Like after this there was no Jerusalem. Like they had destroyed the temples, and the people had scattered. Most of the people, they had either scattered to Africa. That's where you get your Negro land, and you get your King Judah. Because a lot of Judah, they just went and meshed with a lot of African tribes because they knew they could hide there, because they look almost similar but not identical to a lot of Hamites. So they know they could really hide there and not be tampered with. up until the 1700s before the African slave trade. And I'll let you touch on Deuteronomy 28.
All right, so Deuteronomy 28, this is when you get the point of like slavery and things like that. So I'm gonna be dwelling between 27 and 34. And I'll read a few. I'll read 27 through 29. Got like a sound coming from your headphones, but it's loud. Like a buzzing sound. There you go. And Yahweh will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with emerods, and with the scab, and with the itch whereof thou canst not be healed. Yahweh shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. So basically what he's talking about through that one was during the time of slavery. With 29, you grope at noonday. I mean, you're in the field all day, so you're tired and things like that. And it's not going to get any better no time soon. You're going to continue to be oppressed and spoiled, and no man shall save thee. Just like when he said, you will not see Egypt again by thee. He just means redeem. You will not be saved by anybody else. 30, thou shalt betroth the wife and another man. Basically, like the slave, with the slave masters, they would rape the women, and then you would have still doing that. And he would lay with them, and he would procreate with his wife, and you built a house for the slave master, and you didn't live there. You was building a house for somebody else. 36 and 37. 36. And Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. So what he's talking about is, you got that old plantation Christianity. Is what he's talking about. You have gods built of wood and stone. That false god JC, which is a Greek god. He was, you see a lot of them built off wood. 37, thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither Yahweh shall lead thee. I mean, you see that now. You got all these you got like the N-word. You got coon, monkey, all that. Those are bywords, is what he's telling you about. And you got other ones in through the names they call like Mexicans and like Native Americans and things like that. So he's letting you know, you're gonna be called by these names for a minute, even like black, Negro, things like that. 65 through 68. I'm not gonna read all these. I'm just gonna let you know, things like this, like 66. You see it today, especially today. 66, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. So basically, you always watching your back. You can't be, you can't rest. You can't do anything. You always on 10 because you never know what's going to happen. So you always watch your back, like I said, especially in these times when our people still get killed left and right for things, simple stuff like going to the store or something like that. 68, like I was saying before, and Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwoman, and no man shall buy you. So when he's saying bring thee into Egypt, Egypt just means the land of bondage. Yes, Egypt is a place, but if you read through Egypt's history, it's been nothing but like what they send like for captivity and things like that, and by ships. Well, if we lived in Africa already, we didn't need a ship to get to Egypt. You know what I'm saying? You just right there. You just skip, hop on the wave. Not like actual, but like, hypothetically, that's how far you was to what's it called. So when he's talking about that, he's talking about, to the New World or shipped out to wherever he was based off the transatlantic slavery. And when he's saying he means Israel. You know what I'm saying? He said, be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwoman, slave, basically. And no man shall buy you, basically. No man shall redeem you. No man shall save you out of slavery because you have to pay for your sins. So when people be like, oh, you know, I don't understand why God just looked over slavery. Well, he did it. He told you what was going to happen. Deuteronomy 28, you know, 1 through 14 is the blessings, and 15 through 68 was the curses. So he gave a heads up about what was going to happen, and we still decided to act a fool. And this is where we end up at. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's coming towards the end, but he just letting you know, when the Most High says something, it's going to happen. Simple as that. And history reflects it.
Exactly, and I just want to wrap up with a couple of verses from Baruch. Baruch 4, verses 5 to 7. Be of good cheer, my people. The more is your soul to your destruction, because ye have moved wrath. You are delivered him made by sacrifice unto the devil, God. And I'm verses 22.
Wait, that was Baruch. Which one?
That was Baruch 4, verse 5. I'm gonna jump to 5 through 7. And I'm gonna jump down to verses
20 who?
21 22. Now be of good cheer, children, cry unto the Lord, and he will deliver you from the power of the hand of the enemy. For my hope is in the everlasting. He will save you. His joy is come unto me, because the mercy of him, which shall soon come by our Savior.
You keep going. And yeah, see, you breaking up a little. So basically what he was reading Baruch 4, 5 through 7, which he was saying, be of good cheer, my people, the memorial of Israel. You were sold to the nations, not for your destruction, but because you moved Yahweh to wrath, you were delivered unto the enemies. Then you jump to what, 20, 22?
21 through 22.
So he read 21 and 22, which be of good cheer, O my children, cry unto Yahweh, and he will deliver you from the power and hand of the enemies. For my hope is in the everlasting, that he will save you, and joy is coming to me from the Holy One, because of the mercy which shall soon come unto you from the everlasting our Savior. Oh, and number 1, Baruch 4:1, this is the book of the commandments of Yahweh, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. That's another point you could have, I had to throw in there. I had to highlight it. But just what we were just talking about through that one, it's going to be like, if you came in late, it's going to be like different segments of it. We just gave you the background of like the history, because it's important to understand the history so people can understand the Bible better. Like when you read the Bible, you can't just read it for what it is. Yes, it's the words of the Most High, but you understand the other nations also tampered with it, because they're jealous of the children of the Most High. But you have to also look at history, because history repeats itself. That's one thing, and history doesn't lie. Just like when he's talking about the siege of like with the Romans, and they had to flee. Well, you're gonna have to do the same thing anyways. So he's letting you know what you had to do before, and it's going to happen again. Which when we're talking about the ships of Tarshish, and how we're talking about how we got led out of Jerusalem and things like that, and he's going to bring us back. Which I don't think we did a segment on the ships of Tarshish. We'll probably do that one later. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what he's talking about. But for right now, we're just talking about the 12 tribes of Israel and how they got split apart, and how they how all this stuff came to be leading up to being sent to Africa and being sent into slavery.
Yeah, part 1. So 2 will more in detail about the 12 tribes of them and breaking down about each of them.
With that, we give all honor, praise, and power and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakodash. Double honors to the elders, the prophets, the apostles, the wise men, our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Salutations to the hopeful elect that are out here pushing the truth to the four corners of the earth. To you, I say Shalom, Kwam Yasharallah in the Bible, Shalom.